As Israel struggles to maintain two fragile ceasefires on its borders, conflict could break out with the main player pulling the strings on all of this, on Hezbollah and Hamas. That is, of course, Iran. New reports in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post say that Israel is likely to preemptively strike Iran's nuclear program in the coming months, according to multiple U.S. intelligence reports. The warning comes after Israel was able to significantly degrade Iran's air defenses in a retaliatory attack against Iran in late October. The next potential strike would reportedly come as an attempt to set back Tehran's nuclear weapons plans as much as possible, but the question is how effective it would be and at what cost. Jody Natelovitz reports.
An American intelligence assessment conducted during the final days of the Biden administration claims that Israel has been considering large-scale strikes on Iranian nuclear sites with the aim of exploiting Iran's weaknesses. Articles published Wednesday by the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal claim that according to a January report produced by the Intelligence Directorate of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Defense Intelligence Agency, Israel was planning strikes on Iran's Fordo and Natanz nuclear facilities within the first 6 months of 2025. The Wall Street Journal also reporting that Israel is expected to urge the Trump administration to back the idea, Washington being seen as a player that could potentially join the strikes. Two potential methods of attack were outlined by the Washington Post: a standoff strike using air-launched ballistic missiles from outside of Iranian airspace, and an arguably riskier option, Israeli aircraft to enter Iranian airspace and dropping BLU-109 bombs on the nuclear sites. U.S. military sources adding that American support, including in the form of weapons, would prove essential for Israel to successfully carry out such attacks. Notably, the Trump administration last week authorized the sale of BLU-109 guidance kits to Israel. Israel is reportedly worried about the window of opportunity to halt Iran's nuclear capabilities closing. But according to the intelligence analysis, a strike on Iran's nuclear installations may only delay Tehran by months or weeks, further implying that such attacks could encourage Iran to seek uranium enrichment for weapons.
Progress should not be stopped. We cannot be content with our current level. Say that we previously set a limit for the accuracy of our missiles, but we now feel staying within this limit is no longer enough.
Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump signed a national security memorandum regarding his policy of maximum pressure on Iran. And while he did not exclude the possibility of Israeli strikes on Iran, he showed preference for a diplomatic method first. At the time of signing the executive order, Trump said he was, quote, torn on the matter, and for now it is still up in the air whether he would grant approval of an Israeli assault on Iran.
And joining us now to discuss this is Dr. Meir Javedanfar, Iran lecturer at the Reichman University. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, reports that Israel is considering preemptively striking Iran in the next 5 months. Quite specific reports, but how seriously should these assessments be taken?
Bianca, I've been doing this work, I've been doing this job for long enough to know that I've lost count of the number of times we've read reports have been published pertaining to a possible Israeli military strike,
Right.
a unilateral Israeli strike against Iran's nuclear program. Allow me, in this case, to refer to a recent article published by Sir Niall Ferguson in Foreign Affairs about 2 months ago. He talks about President Trump and how he negotiates. One of the ways President Trump negotiates is, first and foremost, he threatens the other side through by putting his finger on the Achilles heels. With the Chinese, it's tariffs, and in the case of Iran, it's the possibility of an Israeli strike. I think but ultimately, what President Trump wants more than anything else is a big, beautiful deal, as he put it. Just like when he was a real estate developer, he liked this big Trump Tower projects. He reached a big, beautiful deal. He wants the same with the Iranians, just as he tried with the North Koreans. So I think in this case, it is reasonable to assume that this is a pressure tactic. This is a pressure tactic to get the Iranians to say, okay, you need to come to the negotiation table, because Ayatollah Khamenei has for now said that it's not wise to return to the negotiation table, because the last time Trump walked out of the nuclear deal, let's be honest, But although many people in Iran want the sanctions to end, for now Ayatollah Khamenei doesn't want it. And I think this kind of report is meant to cajole him into returning to the negotiation table.
All right, so you're saying that this is most of all a pressure tactic, that it's not really a likelihood that it will happen.
It's
but I do
reasonable to assume. It's reasonable to assume. Of course, I don't know for 100%, but it's reasonable to assume.
This is your analysis with the information we have based at this point. I do want to ask you, though, because you're saying that Trump really seems to want this big and beautiful deal. Let's say that he gets this deal on the nuclear weapons. There's a deal, and Iran is not going to be pursuing actively its nuclear weapons for a while. For Israel, though, that still leaves the other part of Iran's big plans quite open and vulnerable, which is the rebuilding and strengthening of the axis of resistance.
That's correct, Bianca. And this is where we have to use, us Israelis, our negotiation techniques and tactics and strategy to find a way to persuade President Trump that leaving other issues out, such as the missile program or Iran's presence in the region, is also against the interest of America. Because President Trump's, first and foremost, his interest is that of the United States under his leadership. If he sees that it's enough, that it's sufficient for the interest of America to reach a deal over the nuclear program and that's it, then he'll do it. He will do it. But we have to find a way to negotiate with him. But that, Bianca, really depends on a lot of factors. Let's see how it works out over Gaza. Let's see how the current government behaves towards the Americans towards Gaza, because the Americans want the Gaza war to ultimately end. But there are people in Israel, such as Mr. Smotrich, who wants the war to continue. It also depends on the stability of the current government in Israel. But we will have to find a way to convince him, unless he's convinced already. But that's very difficult. That's predicting what President Trump will do. It's a little bit like astrology. You have to, Trumpology, we can call it. It's very difficult. This is one of his strengths. Nobody knows what he will do. But in case he's not going to include these things, then it's going to we're going to have to really put our best brains together to find a way to convince him. But there's a long road ahead until then, and we have to wait and see how things work out.
Right, Doctor, I don't want you to be guessing here on Trumpology, but I do want to ask you one more question where we sort of play out the scenario. Let's say that a deal is not reached in a certain amount of time, Trump loses patience. Is there a scenario where we could see him giving sort of a tacit carte blanche to Israel to go for it? And if so, is this something that Israel would want to do and go through with?
Bianca, that really depends on what Iran does. President Trump follows the foreign policy of President Andrew Jackson, Jacksonian foreign policy in the United States. I think it was the 7th or 8th. Don't quote me on the exact number of what number was the President Andrew Jackson in the list of U.S. presidents. But Jacksonians don't start wars unless they are attacked. If they're attacked and the gloves come off, then it's open season. But they don't like to start wars. They want to focus on domestic issues. So if there is no deal, it really depends on what Ayatollah Khamenei does. If Ayatollah Khamenei keeps the Iranian nuclear program at the same level, or maybe steps back on a couple of things, that the chances that President Trump will want an attack are going to be reduced, because Jacksonians don't want to start wars until they're attacked, unless they're attacked. And when they're attacked, then God help the other side.
All right, Dr. Meir Javidan, thank you so much for your analysis and input. Back here in the studio, I want